We're Dane and Stacey, and we've been travelling full-time since 2017. Over the last few years, we've been to so many amazing places, creating content and sharing the experience across this channel.
I don't know about this.
But this video isn't about us, it's about sharing some epic destinations with you. Travel is so much more than being a sheep and going to the same places that everyone visits. From our perspective, some of the most memorable moments and the most authentic experiences we've had have been from places completely off the beaten path.
So today we want to share with you our top 12 underrated places to travel.
Krakow, Poland. Of all the places we've visited, Poland is definitely near the top when it comes to underrated travel spots, and Krakow in particular was one of our favourite cities. Like a lot of places in this video though, Krakow isn't exactly a common European getaway, but we think that it totally should be. The city has areas that cater for tourism, which is a positive because that means there's still lots of things to do, but it never really feels overly commercial or crazy busy outside of those areas. Poland's had a pretty turbulent history, and Krakow seems to have made the most of the chance to rebuild. It's like a mashup of historic buildings meeting modern culture. There's loads of cool spaces around the town that have been set up in old buildings or abandoned blocks. So there's craft beer and coffee everywhere you go.
Cheers.
The day-to-day costs are a lot cheaper than other European cities, and we ended up spending a month there sharing all of our living costs in a video I'll link below. Much like the city though, the people can sometimes seem just a little bit harsh at first glance, but they are crazy friendly and welcoming once you engage with them. We spent the afternoon with a pub full of locals during the Football World Cup, and we barely exchanged any words in English, but they definitely exchanged a few vodkas with us.
Polska! Albanian Riviera, Albania. If you've never heard of the Albanian Riviera, we wouldn't even be surprised. Sadly, Albania doesn't get anywhere near the love it deserves, not just because of past politics, but also because of the bad rep that they get across media, TV shows and movies. It's often portrayed in a bad light. But the reality of being there is so different, it's actually insane. Albanians were some of the nicest people we've ever met and would stop at absolutely nothing to make sure that we were having a good time, we were well fed and we knew exactly where we were going.
He's the best Fredo cappuccino in Albania.
Thank you. One of the biggest draw cards is the coastline of the Riviera. This area shares the same sea as Greece, and photos from there could easily be tagged as Greece and no one would even know the difference, yet few people want to visit. It's a country and area that feels so undiscovered and untapped, which is surprising given how cost-effective and beautiful it can be. It definitely can be difficult with the language barrier. Hiring a car is almost a necessity, and the roads can be crazy and the drivers even crazier, but it's 100% worth the adventure to get in now before it gains popularity.
Asturias, Spain. Spain might not sound like it fits this list, and that's because most people think of the islands or heading south to Barcelona, Valencia, or the party getaway resorts. But we spent 48 hours in a really cool area in the north known as Asturias, and easily could have spent 48 days there if they let us. The north is different. Unlike some of those other spots, Asturias still actually feels like Spain. Tradition is alive and well, it's full of local people, and local life coexists with tourism. One of the things that made it memorable is how varied it is. There's stunning beaches, a world-class national park, city life, mountains surrounding you at all times, an old town, and still greenery and parks in central areas as well. The food in Spain is some of the best in the world, and that's no different up north, but one thing they do better is definitely the cider. They absolutely love it, and so did we. This is the real cider though, not the sweetened crap that you get from a bottle. We're talking about real apples with some real zing. The way it's brought to your table and how it's poured is the traditional method, and it makes for such a cool experience. Amazing. Nice.
Nusa Penida, Indonesia. Not many people talk about going to Indonesia because pretty much everyone goes to Bali and hits up the stock standard places Canggu, Seminyak, Kuta and Ubud. The truth is, we love all those spots, but the best adventure we've had in Indonesia didn't come from there, and it wasn't the Gili Islands either. Nusa Penida is a seriously underrated place to travel if you're game to get behind some handlebars and cruise the island. Nusa Penida actually is a really busy place, but most people go over on a hosted day trip and get driven to the same old touristy spots that everyone goes to, an area known as Kelingking Beach or the T-Rex. Don't get us wrong, the views are amazing, but you're sharing it with 2,000 of your closest friends as people line up to take a selfie at the top of the stairs. Meanwhile, the rest of the island is still developing and is raw. The landscapes are like something out of Jurassic Park. Driving around on scooters, getting lost, stuck in thunderstorms, meeting local people and exploring the small villages with smiling people is what it's all about. Even better, there's beaches everywhere, and on the opposite end of the island was a super chill spot with barely any people. It's the kind of place you're rewarded for taking on the challenge and doing some exploring by yourself.
Mexico City, Mexico. When you think of Mexico, beers on the beach, cocktails in the sun, and all-inclusive resorts jump to mind pretty quickly, but there's so much more to be gained by visiting Mexico City. The perception is anything outside of a resort or a tourist hub is dangerous. Like anywhere, there are definitely risks, but if you're smart about where to go, it can be rewarding. We were in Mexico City for the Formula One, so took on the challenge and found two awesome neighbourhoods known as La Condesa and Roma Norte. They both felt safe. There's huge grouping of cafes, co-working spaces, retail shops, vintage stores, local food, art, greenery, and there are parks literally everywhere. The food in Mexico City is definitely better than the coast, and the prices are a lot more affordable as well. We ended up taking a free walking tour to get the lowdown on the history, check out some of the best architecture, learn more about the culture, eat loads of food, and find some of the coolest areas to go back to. It's a shame Mexico City doesn't get the love that it deserves, so make sure you put it on your list for your next trip and you'll see what makes it so special.
Rarotonga, Cook Islands. We spent a week in Rarotonga filming a bunch of videos and got loads of comments from people looking at maps trying to figure out where the Cook Islands actually are, and that's a great thing. They're nestled down our way, so they're a common vacay spot for Aussies and Kiwis and a bit more disconnected from other places, but that's part of the appeal. It almost feels like a step back in time. There's no McDonald's, KFC or Starbucks. The locals are hilarious and they live a simple, positive lifestyle. Rarotonga is the most chilled place we've travelled, ever. It's got some beautiful landscapes, insane beaches, and the island is surrounded by a big lagoon, so it's really safe and calm for swimming. It can be stormy at times though, so you do have to make the most of it where you can. The seafood is also a real highlight, and the best hour of the day is only ever a few hours away.
Happy hour!
Chiang Mai, Thailand. We're really biased here because Chiang Mai feels like our second home, or our first home in terms of our digital nomad journey. While it's not underrated for nomads, it is sometimes missed by travellers because of where it's positioned up north. Flying into Bangkok and heading south to the islands is a common travel route that bypasses Chiang Mai altogether. One of our most successful videos was actually about the 12 top things to do in Chiang Mai, so I'll link that below. But there's just so much adventure, there's mountains to explore, there's heaps of culture, there's an old town with history and a newer side with more vibrance, a really cool developing coffee culture and insane food like the rest of Thailand. But one of the things we love most is the contrast of the city just feels right. There's a balance here that's kind of hard to explain. It's this mixture of local roads with street food vendors and no sidewalks, then a massive mall, high-rise and air conditioning with a cinema and gym. In some cities it would kind of not feel right, but there's just something about Chiang Mai that seems to make it work. We've spent close to a year there in total over multiple trips, often staying for 2+ months at a time, getting an apartment, settling in and creating our own routine. But it's also an awesome spot to visit for just a few days, so don't just head straight to the beaches down south.
Istanbul, Turkey. When we say Istanbul, you might be surprised. It's a popular city and far from undiscovered, but what lots of people don't know is there are two distinctly different sides to the city. We chose to stay on the Asian side, which is considered more local and not really a focus for tourism. The neighbourhood was called Krakow and had a really fun feel about it. There were more cafes and bars in a grouping than we've ever seen, and because it's less touristy, the contrast in the price over this side versus the more touristy European side was mind-blowing. There's a great waterfront area with walks. People would sit and have picnics with their family in the sunshine.
You instantly kind of love it down here already.
The streets felt local, there's a creative kind of community there, and some undertones of a younger, more rebellious side doing their own thing. In comparison, the European side of Istanbul is madness, but that's because all of the biggest attractions and most of the things to do are over there. But reaching it is just a ferry or a cheap taxi ride away. We didn't plan on spending our days surrounded by tourists, so it was great to live a more local and chilled life and then venture into the busy hubs for the sights, then escape back to Krakow for some peace and quiet.
Lewis and Harris, Scotland. We're often asked about where the best beaches in the world are, and when Scotland features in the top 3 for us, people can be pretty surprised.
Are you sure we're in Scotland? It's incredible.
The beaches in Scotland are legit in terms of their beauty, but you need to be pretty brave to actually swim there year round. We've got nothing but love for Lewis and Harris. It's a Scottish island in the Outer Hebrides. It's the largest island in Scotland and really underrated because most people go to the Isle of Skye instead and haven't actually heard of Lewis and Harris. It's a magical place because both sides of the island look completely different somehow. One side is huge mountains and full of lochs, and the other is stunning beaches, grass, and a more flat landscape. Tradition is still alive there and families have been passing down land for generations. They still use peat for heating and they have sites across the island where you get the chance to see how people once lived. It's got incredible seafood, Scottish people are literally some of the funniest in the world and their accents are the best. They're beyond welcoming and in a lot of ways it kind of reminds us of our home, New Zealand.
Bay of Islands, New Zealand. Speaking of New Zealand, not much of our little home is considered underrated, but there are definitely more common routes that people take. Most people arriving in Auckland will drive south, heading up the main touristy spots like Taupo, Rotorua and Wellington. You can then ferry across to the South Island and head towards places like Queenstown, which we absolutely love. But if you head north of Auckland, there's some really underrated exploring to be done.
Amazing! New Zealand's so pretty.
The Bay of Islands are definitely well known and busy at certain times of the year, but underrated in the way that it still very much feels like old school New Zealand up there. If you've got wheels, there's beaches every 10 minutes, fish and chips to be grabbed, coffee to be had, and small communities with heaps of friendly locals open to having a yarn about life. It's a slower pace of life and a part of the country that we're really proud of. Even further up is one of the narrowest parts of New Zealand. Coast on either side is minutes away, and a bit further up is the tip of the country, Cape Reinga. The landscapes up there are stunning and rugged. It's a bit of a mission to get up there, and it's kind of in the opposite direction from the South Island, but it's 100% worth the trip.
Zagreb, Croatia. Croatia is a dreamy spot. One of our most memorable weeks of travel was on a mini cruise there down around the islands. The water is clear, we swam daily, and the weather was mint. Sadly, that's often all people think about though. Most travellers go to the coast and forget that Croatia has more to offer than just that coastline. Zagreb was somewhere we really vibed with. Some cities have an aura about them and there's something special that is really hard to put your finger on.
It's hard to explain, I just like the vibe of it.
Yeah, it's always difficult to get across, but some places you just get a feel.
Yeah.
And Zagreb has a feel. In summer, everything was outside. Open air, it's a really social place and the kind of spot where we research the best pubs or cafes to go to and the locals were there as well. That keeps the prices significantly cheaper for food and drink than the coast. The people were friendly, the city is really walkable, but there's great public transport there as well with regular trams. We went to a local football match at the stadium and as New Zealanders it was insane. We've never seen passion and fire like that at a sporting event ever. And they likely haven't seen New Zealanders at their local derby either because we stood out like a sore thumb, but were never made to feel excluded amongst the chaos. Overall, just a really cool city that you should not miss for your travels out this way.
Paxos and Antipaxos, Greece. Mykonos and Santorini are the most common holiday spots, but the reality is all of Greece is stupidly beautiful, even the mainland. These two have just developed the quickest and capitalised on tourism the best. But the best beaches that we've seen in Greece with the most beautiful water and amazing scenery was in Paxos and Antipaxos. The most ideal way to reach them is from a boat, so it's the perfect place to take a multi-day trip or sail by yourself around the islands out there. It's so much more peaceful than Mykonos could ever be. Paxos and Antipaxos are small, so there's a more intimate feel with less people, less partying, slower pace, and it's more about being there rather than checking in or taking a photo of being there to show people you went. People actually watch the sunset rather than get their Instagram photo there. To top it off, Greek food is so bloody good, the rosé is the best, and their Freddo cappuccinos are worth visiting the country for alone.
So that's our top 12 most underrated places to travel. If you want to see any more of the places that we've talked about, check the description. There's links to playlists with a handful of videos of each of the countries and cities that we've mentioned. We obviously haven't been everywhere though, and this is a list based on our personal experience, so let us know in the comments anywhere we need to visit that should make the list, or anywhere that you've been that other travellers can check out for themselves. Peace!